Spy Kids 3 holds like this really weird place in like my heart. It's this movie that I saw like an infinite amount of times as a kid. Same with the first one. I didn't have any access to the second one, but there's like probably 70 copies of the first and third one just scratched all to hell, like circling through my family's homes. And I watched Spy Kids 3D. It was an experience for me when I was a child. It was like an entire another world. It's probably because the first time I saw like even super basic CGI. And it was just surreal to me when I watched it. I was like, man, Junie is literally me. I'm literally a kid that could go into a video game. And so as I rewatch it a ton because, you know, it's such a big talking point. It's seared itself into my little growing mind subconscious. So now it just has to live with me for the rest of my life. And so now that I watch it when I'm grown up, it's super strange to me because it feels like it's at any time in the movie, it feels like there's maybe 10 minutes before it like really gets to the core of what it wants to say. Like with the first one, it's really obvious. There's these very typical spies, right? And they're parents and they're growing up and they have to accept, you know, they don't get to be like insane cool dudes. You don't get to beat up some random kid's dad while you're dropping your son at school. Because he made fun of his lunchbox. It's just, so it's strange to me how the first one, I never saw the second one, so I don't know if this is like a gradual thing or not. There's such a difference in between them, because the first one is just a coming of age story with like an undertone of family, right? It's the kids growing up out of like being kids. It's the parents growing up into being less of cool epic spies and more of parents. And it's Machete growing to love his brother again. And so it's all that wrapped in a nice little bow of just this sort of absurdity that the entire series holds. But the third one is like this weird, like, vengeance story. And it's sort of a vengeance story, but it's like the villain trying to get revenge because, like, preemptively revenging the revenge that's coming to him because he paralyzed somebody 20 years ago. So Sylvester Stallone, the toy maker, is just making this little, like, fake little 3D world, and he's like, I gotta get this grandpa guy to forgive me before he comes to my house and kills me and my 3, like, clones that he has. And so, ultimately at the end, the grandpa's like, nah, I just wanted to scare you like for like 3 hours just to give you like a touch of how it's felt to be paralyzed for 20 years. Just wanted to terrify you. And so like the grandpa gives this like nice little speech at the end. It's all like, man, forgiveness really is that cool. And Sylvester Stallone's like, man, I was wrong for paralyzing you. But it's sort of more along the lines of like, he didn't need revenge because the grief the toy makers felt about it over the last like 20 years is more than enough than like some sort of like vengeance. Which is really strange because the only character that could be like classified as like betraying Junie just gives up like a hero's sacrifice and dies. Purple Girl doesn't, like, she gets no sort of like, she gets nothing as a sort of like token to like this idea that, you know, vengeance is the ultimate answer. She just dies, and Junie goes on living. And so it's really weird that, like, because like the first one is a prime example of sort of like a parallel lesson. The parents learn the lessons, and the kids learn the lessons, and it's all Gucci by the end. But the second one, it's like, oh, well, the grandpas taught an important lesson. Maybe Junie could parallelly do it, but the movie just ends after they fight giant gorillas. And so it's kind of strange to me how that works out. And the third one, that's not the only time where the third one is really strange with actually like saying what it wants to say. Because in the third one, there's like 5 main characters in the third one. And 3 of those characters just sort of like, they like brought into the real world, and these very like applicable traits that like any person who has them would continue having them to, like, regardless of where they are. I think it's like leadership like coolness, and like smartness, all three traits that like people don't just like can't just like fake, are the traits that they just don't have in the real world but have in the video game. So like it feels like they were like going to bring them into the robot fight and be like, no guys, those are still applicable. They just leave. It's like, man, in the real world, I'm not actually smart. I wear a leather jacket and have a cool haircut. And so, Spy Kids 3D, while it's beautiful and it will never leave my heart, it's just strange in how it gets so close to having something to say that makes sense and that is continuous out through the entire film, but just doesn't entirely ever like say it. Like the grandpa's the only person that ends the film with, okay, I taught something by the end of this. I guess Sylvester Stallone's the only one that learned something through it. So yeah, Spy Kids 3D, or Why I Am Deranged.